Now, the GarageBand drummer is fantastic. Well, all the drums on GarageBand are really good. But there are things that you can do to make the drums just a little bit more subtle. Now, what I mean by that is the timing of some things. Hi-hats tend to be programmed so they're absolutely on the beat, whereas sometimes just bringing the hi-hats back a little, just making them slightly lazier, just makes things plod a bit better. Now, if I go to a new document and just do a very, very basic bass and snare only, so let's try, let's leave SoCal, that's fine, and then just record something. Okay, fairly sketchy timing there, but it defaults to 1/16, so that's fine. So when that plays back, that'll be all correct. If we now go to the hi-hats on drummer, now let's just take the kick and the snare away, because I use the hi-hat from drummer in conjunction with the kick and the snare that I've programmed. I just find it a little bit more flexible that way, and then press play. Okay, that's all right, that's okay. But what happens then if we go slightly further into this, and then in the plugins and EQ on the hi-hats, instead of just leaving it as is, I'm going to put the audio unit extension sample delay. Now this is, instead of the effects that you get on GarageBand, this is the one where you get all these orange looking things. Let's see what happens now. The sample delay, when you open it up, you get a single control. So it's not the prettiest of pictures, but it does quite a lot for you. Now, naught samples, and you sort of move it about and you get all this, well, you think, well, what is that then? There are 44,100 samples in every second of audio on an iPad, which is CD quality. And if I go all the way to the end here, I get 1/10 of that figure. So the delay you're looking at there is 1/10 of a second. So you've got very fine control. Now, just listening through to the hi-hats, I'm going to vary the sample delay, and you'll hear how those hi-hats move with respect to the bass and the snare drum, and how it can make it sound a little bit more punchy. Hi-hats are ever so slightly later now than the kick and the snare, which for me just brings the whole thing back, and it just makes something plod along rather than hurrying. It's always better in music. If you're playing a solo or rhythm guitar, it's always best to be ever so slightly behind the beat than ahead of it. That's really important. If you rush along, it sounds really stressful, sounds really stressed. I'm just going to loop the kick and the snare drum and show you that once again on the audio, the sample delay. At the moment with 660 samples, which is about 1/80th of a second. It's pretty small, but it makes all the difference. That's not so good, where it's really, really lazy. You just want something that's not so utterly tight. That's okay, it's still a tiny bit, could go a little bit further. For me, that is just saying to the musician who's playing over the top, just doom, 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 doom. It just means they're more likely to sit on the beat. Now, of course, when you start this, switch that metronome off, because it drives everybody round the twist, and it's actually not very much help in all of this. You really want a good drum track to start with. My next video is going to be more of a session on this, but using swing 16th, so be sure to follow that link in the description box below.